Paul, welcome to the Blogger Genius podcast.
Thank you.
Before we launch into your tips, will you tell my audience who you are and how you've become an expert in selling?
Well, I've been doing clinical hypnotherapy for 30 years, mostly working with social anxiety with men, single men, who were afraid to communicate with women and start conversations. And in that 30-year career, around 2005, I started to get emails from men who sent me pictures of their family and their kids and thanking me. And about 30% of them said, in addition to finding my love of my life and having a great family, I used what you taught me in hypnotherapy to become a fantastic salesperson. I'm now beating the next best person by 30, 40, 50%. I'm crushing it in my career. So I went back into my mad scientist language lab. It took me about 3 years to map this over into a way of selling that also involves touching the heart and touching the spirit, because I'm also a certified meditation instructor. And I came up with something that really is practical and hard-hitting at the same time, lets you recognize that you are in service in a unique way. And there's some unique things in what I teach that I genuinely think no one else has taught, and your audience can allow themselves to feel excited once they hear it.
Okay, so my audience, the thing I hear a lot from them is selling is icky. I'm good at creating content. I'm good at creating community, but now you're asking me to sell. And what I'm seeing in the landscape is that being a content creator or a blogger, now it's shifting. It is now about packaging up our expertise as products and services and selling them to people. They are real people, and you are building a relationship with them. And I get pushback and say, no, I'm just not good at this. So when I was talking to you, I was saying, I try to reframe it for people that selling is service and selling is a transfer of feelings. Tell me the framework through which you see selling, and then some strategies people can use.
Let me set this up before I get to the practical. I promise we'll do this 85% practical. Let me give you an understanding I have. And it's this I learned from one of my mentors. What the thinker thinks, the prover proves. Your unconscious beliefs about what things mean will control your behavior. So your internal dialogue works like this. Your language structures your consciousness. Your consciousness structures your decisions and drives your behavior. So if you believe that, that's the way you'll work. Someone could come into my office or do it by Zoom, and this is not what I'm here to promote, and tell me they're afraid of spiders. And I can do hypnosis with them, and the next minute they're picking up spiders. That's if you're afraid of spiders. I'm so sorry to trigger you. Here's the first understanding I would like to share with your audience, if I may. You're never selling your product or service. You're always selling decisions and good feelings about decisions. And your prospect just doesn't know how to make good decisions, and they don't trust themselves to make good decisions. May I unpack why that is before I give specific techniques?
Yes.
Okay. So your prospects are, first of all, overloaded. They have too much input coming in because of this thing. And so because of that, your prospect can't focus the way they used to. An unfocused mind needs tons of help to make a decision. So your prospects no longer trust their own ability to make a good decision. When you assist them in trusting themselves, and that's a key step to any sale. Remember, you're selling decisions and good feelings about decisions. The first.
So wait, I want to stop you for 1 second. Is it trusting themselves?
Yes.
Or is it trusting me as the
Both.
seller?
Both. They have to do both. Now, it used to be know, like, and trust was enough. That's true, but it's incomplete. Now we have a different challenge. The prospect no longer trusts themselves because their attention span has been reduced. They have too many options thrown their way. And I don't want to use foul language, so let me just say they've been ripped off by their institutions, by their government, by banks. And so they have a natural distrust. And so when you can assist your prospects in trusting themselves, that's a very healing process. So those are some understandings, fundamental understandings upon which I'll build the exact specific language that I will share with your audience. Does that make sense?
Yes. So for what you're saying is it's not me. I mean, there's an element of you need to trust me, but I'm going to put the power back on you and help guide you to make the right decision so that you can feel like you're in control and you're making this conscious decision and you're making the right decision.
I don't like the word correct. I will change up something. Decisions are largely made on the unconscious level. We would like to think they're made for rational reasons, but for the most part, it's unconscious or subconscious. I use the words interchangeably because I do hypnosis. So because decisions are made largely unconscious, I teach people to speak both to the conscious mind, but also to the unconscious mind. Now, I want to address something. People may say that's manipulation. Well, when I do therapeutic work, I'm directing people's thoughts and feelings so they can make discoveries on their own. So when you address someone on the unconscious level, you're not misleading, you're not lying about facts, you're simply bringing to the surface their ability to trust, their recognition that they deserve what it is you're offering. Let me give you another rule. Never underestimate your prospects' lack of deservingness, their belief that they don't deserve what you've got, and they don't believe it's possible for them to have. You have to change their beliefs about what they can trust in themselves, what they deserve, and what's possible for them. Those are the real things you're selling. And you're also transferring.
So is this the transfer? Is this the transformation? People talk
Yes.
about you sell the future version of somebody.
Yes.
I'm overweight. I want to lose weight. You sell me what I would be like 20 pounds lighter.
And may
let's
I
say.
play a little word game with you? I also do neurolinguistic programming.
Please.
Language is powerful. Let's look at the word transformation, but spell it differently. TRANCE hyphen formation. Transformation. And so people walk
Okay.
around in a trance. Your prospects are in a trance. I don't mean they're doing this and they're quacking like ducks or anything like that. I mean their beliefs about their world, what they can afford, what they deserve, act like a hypnotic trance. They literally will not see possibilities about what is there for them. So let's say, remember, we're only selling decisions and good feelings about decisions, but for the sake of this discussion, let's say we're selling a timeshare. Now, I know everyone has a button on timeshares. Let's say we're on the timeshares overlooking the beach in Tahiti or Bali. It's a beautiful view. If you step out to the balcony, you feel the sun warming your skin to a blush. The breeze is so soft and caressing and gentle. You look out at the aquamarine water and it's dancing with the azure blue. But what is your prospect doing? They've turned around. They're looking through that little fisheye lens through the hotel doorway because they're afraid someone's coming to get them. Metaphorically, our job is to take them by the shoulders, turn them around, and show them the view of what's possible for themselves. Now, you're probably thinking, wait, I sell diets and exercise. Doesn't matter. You're still showing them the view of what's possible for them and the transformation of where they'll be after they're done working with you. So remember, you're a decision service technician. I challenge all of your audience to think of themselves as a decision service technician. You're in the service of them making a good decision.
Is this because, again, I love how our brains work, that we have so many decisions in our life to make that if we can be on autopilot, for example, if you get in your car and you drive to work and you don't even remember the trip, it's because it's that passive brain energy. I don't want to, nor could I survive if everything I had to do was with my big conscious brain. Instead, I know the drive and I'm kind of on autopilot for most of the life. I know how to do laundry on autopilot.
No.
I know how to do so much without actually having to give it so much conscious
Well,
thought.
I'll add that's correct. Our brains are hardwired to keep us safe. We are hardwired to look for danger, to look for loss. Back when we were running around in the veranda in the high grass in Africa 100,000 years ago, and we heard the grass rustle in a strange way, we didn't have time to figure out, is that food or is that a saber-toothed cat coming to kill me? We had to run. So our brains are hardwired for loss and fear. We are walking around sleepwalking because we just do the patterns. Unless we're very aware and we have the practice for awareness. That's why I teach meditation and do meditate. And we have an intent to not be on autopilot. So many of the things we do, the most important decisions of our lives, are not really made consciously. Jillian, did you ever just find yourself falling in love?
Yes.
Okay. Did you really consciously think it over? I'm sure you went through the reasons afterwards, like, oh, here's what I think I see. But did you really consciously make the decision to fall in love? No. I know, and everyone here watching me today has had the experience of falling out of love. You just were able to find yourself falling out of love. That was not conscious either. Did you ever just find yourself reaching for the refrigerator and you don't even remember walking over there or what you were looking for? So much of our behavior is based on patterns. So your prospect has those patterns too. When you break those patterns, you set them free. So you can almost think of what I do as freedom selling. Setting your prospects free, getting them to trust themselves, and leading them to make better decisions. That's a heroic thing. How can you feel yucky and icky when you're doing healing work and you're being heroic? You can't, because you're giving a gift.
Okay, so I think that is a great framework. I like this idea that we are breaking people's trances by showing them the beautiful view of the ocean, what is possible, instead of focusing on the fear. So it's like we kind of wipe away the lens so they can see a broader view of themselves and they can see a better version of themselves that they didn't think was possible. Now tell me, Paul, how do I do this?
Great. So the first thing we need to do is get prospects to trust themselves. Now this is going to sound crazy, but here's the rule. When you're doing unconscious influence, in the beginning, you don't want to be specific. You do not want to be clear. I know everyone says, let's make the message clear. In fact, what I've learned in 30 years of doing hypnotic work, if you want to be influential in the beginning, don't make it clear. And I'll give you a specific example. Let's say you're doing a presentation. I don't know what the context would be. I would use 4 or 5 words to create deep trust, and then I would use a simple phrase at the very end to create that trust in themselves. And here's the way it works. I would say, before we begin our exploration together today, let's pause right there. Before we, what does we imply? Is that me doing it to you, or is that our doing it together? Before we begin not before I show you my listing, or before I present this opportunity to coach with me. Before we begin that's another one, our exploration. Exploration is a very powerful, persuasive word. For every exploration, there must be a leader. And for every leader, there must be starts with the letter F.
Follower.
Exactly. So the minute they hear that on the unconscious level, they're accepting the suggestion that they are your follower. So they don't just trust you, now they're following you. Before we begin our exploration together today, will you promise me one thing? No, do we make promises to people we don't trust? No. Will you promise me to please share the questions? I didn't say ask the questions. Ask is something you're doing to me. I said share the questions. That builds the idea of this relationship. Will you share the questions that naturally arise? Here's the real cool part. When a great decision's being made. Now, Jillian, did I say what the great decision is?
No.
Did I say who's going to be making it?
No.
Did I say when it's going to be made or how or for what reason?
No.
When you're vague like that, the unconscious mind begins to search for what the meaning is. Now, because I set up in the beginning with my language all those suggestions that we're in a trusting relationship, the unconscious mind will accept the suggestion that the great decision is being made by the prospect to move forward with you. This is how we install, encourage, evoke that belief that they can trust themselves. Those three words, not a great decision to buy from me today. That is icky. That is pushy. That is salesy. I agree. That's yucky. I wouldn't do that. But when you say a great decision is being made, you're not saying who's going to make it. There's no pressure. But on the unconscious level, the unconscious mind goes, I have all these suggestions that we're in a trusting relationship. I'm going to move ahead. I'm going to trust myself, a great decision, and I'm going to make the decision to move forward. Now, some people will say this is manipulation. So let me make a distinction. I just had surgery, robotic surgery. It doesn't matter what it was for. And that surgeon very skillfully manipulated that robot to do everything. I feel fine, a remarkable recovery. I'm glad he manipulated that robot to do the cutting and the suturing. If by manipulation you mean leaning on people's pain points really hard, misleading them about facts, leaving out important facts, lying about your intent, that's evil manipulation. That's not only yucky, icky, that's vile. I'm not talking about that.
Dishonest, yes. Yes. Okay, so here is, though, I can hear my audience in my head.
Good.
I think people deep down who are starting to sell are having their own crisis of confidence in that what they're selling isn't deserving, meaning I can give it away for free and feel okay about that. But now all of a sudden, I have to believe in my product and charge money for it and think that you are going to pay me money for this, something I assume it's not that valuable. Therefore, I have a disconnect in my own mind as the seller, which is maybe I'm not worthy.
This idea of self-worth, it's a very tenuous concept. Worthy according to whom? Worthy by what definition? Worthy is measured by what? All we can do is observe behavior and ask ourselves, is this person who we are influencing going to be better off after they purchase my product or service, or are they going to be worse off? If my product and service is truly going to change their lives in some way, you're cheating them if you don't charge them, because here's why. People will not take action on something that's given for free. For the most part, some people will. There's something deeply programmed in the human mind that says if I get it for free, it's not of value. That's just how it is. The more you charge, the more likely it is the prospect will actually take action on what it is they're deciding to purchase. That's a fact. I'm not playing a mind game. That's a fact. So if you don't charge, and in fact, if you don't raise your prices, it's unlikely your prospects will act on what it is you're... Look, I used to do hard, actual sell discs and VHSs and that sort of thing. I had a mentor named Dan Kennedy, and he said 90% of the people don't even watch the discs or read the books. Dan was also big into infomercials. He said the number one thing that would make an exercise product a best-selling infomercial is if it would fit under someone's bed. If they could slide it under the bed and forget all about it. You see this in gym memberships. January 1st.
January, they're
they
there
store,
for 3 weeks.
But no one uses them. However, when someone hires an elite trainer and they're paying them a ton of money, you better believe they use that trainer's services.
Interesting. Okay, so because this is what this is very much along the lines of what I say. I say people value what they pay for. They're more apt to show up the more money they spend. Even if you're, say, providing a service for a busy mom, by creating some sort of meal plan where you can get your kid out the door 5 minutes earlier. That is something of value. And we need to recognize the value of that and recognize that getting paid for that is a win-win. And I do think, tell me if you agree, Paul, it starts to reprogram you as the seller when people start buying from you.
Yes, and the other thing, totally true. Money is just an exchange of energy. They're taking the stored value, the stored energy they have, they're changing it for the transformation, the energy of the transformation that you're going to help them create. So it's just an exchange of energy. That's all it is. We're so hypnotized by these dollar bills. In my seminars, I used to take a $20 bill and I'd have people examine it. I'd say, what is this? And the front row would all examine it. And I'd hand it to me. And I'd tear it into pieces. And there'd be gasps in the room. You could see people turning green or wanting, like, yelling at me, what are you doing? What are you doing? I said, this is just a piece of paper. If you took this to Indonesia, no one would take it. It's a concept. It's a hypnotic construct that we have been convinced has value. It's not the same as gold. Everyone around the world, if I melted this down into a coin, everyone around the world would take it because it's instantly recognizable as rare and valuable. I'm just trying to say you are hypnotized. It's a social construct. It's a form of hypnosis to look at that dollar bill and go, I gotta have one. I gotta have one. Mm-hmm. Money is important, but money is only a measure. It's only a way of keeping track. It's only one way of keeping track.
Okay, so your whole framework is start with the abstract to get your potential customer open to what you want to sell them that will transform their lives. Now, when you drill down, my hunch is you're going to get more specific.
Yes.
So what is that next step? Right. When we've already built this bond of we're in this and we're going to go on an exploration together.
Right. And then, the next thing you do.
Please share any questions that you have with me.
The next thing we do is we find out about the client's needs versus what they want. You're selling the client what they need, but we need to frame it as something that they want. Meaning, how can I put this? We have to match both. Basically, this is question-based selling. I really want to find out, and I say this to my VIPs. I say, look, honestly, I don't know. And I tell them this at the beginning of the call. We may or may not make a good fit. I don't know. Even if we don't make a good fit, I will give you 1 or 2 usable tips. You can go out, see your sales increase by maybe 10 to 12%. Not a huge number, but not bad for a free call. And then I begin an exploration. I find out where the challenges are, where the problems are. I explore by asking questions. I'll say things like, first and foremost, what are you doing right in your business? What's working for you? I want to get them in the state where they begin to immediately think of what's working, where they're having wins, because that's how I coach personally. I always want to redirect their mind away from looking at losses, which is how we're hardwired. I want to get them off that. And I want to get them into seeing things in a better way. So the first thing I'll always do is what's working. Where are you having wins? Where are you having victories? That's the first thing I do. The second thing I do is I go in knowing what my value proposition is, what my unique value proposition is. And I take every possible objection that I might get and I reframe it as a bonus for them, as something that they can learn from.
So for example, what if I go, you're too expensive?
I'll say, I understand it's a very large investment. And you told me, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, you told me about 5 minutes ago that improving the quality of the time you have with your children is precious to you. So what should we do? And I'll shut up. What should we do? And I'll shut up. So I remind them of the value that they told me about earlier in the call that I got simply by asking the right questions. You understand?
Okay.
I asked the right
Okay.
questions. And so so if you say it's too expensive, I will say, you're right, it is a big investment. It's a high investment.
I would say, what if I'm not necessarily selling a big expensive coaching package? I'm doing this via email, via copywriting. How would you express this in words in a simple email
I've been doing
or a series of emails?
Copywriting is a unique art. My copywriting mentor was Gary Halbert. Gary was one of the great teachers of my life, and many people consider him to be the greatest copywriter who ever lived. Gary did a contest one day in a seminar. He said, we're going to open competing hamburger stands. I'll give you any 3 advantages you want. What are the advantages that you would like? And some people would say, I'd import meat from Argentina. Other people said I'd cook the buns on the spot. And another person said I'd undersell you by 20%.
Yeah.
Gary said, I'm going to beat you all. You know what I want? I want a starving crowd. You have to really research your market and say, who is your starving crowd? And then what are their deepest desires? What are their deepest doubts? What are their deepest fears? What is it that they're afraid to tell themselves and they're afraid to tell their spouses? And then you're going to take that fear and present it not as fear, but as an opportunity. Like me, so you've got to know your market. Then you have to know how to be a really good storyteller.
I love that thinking, which is always looking for the starving people. Where are they and how do you get in front of them? How do you use their language to describe their problems so that you can serve up that solution or open the aperture so that they can see a bigger view?
I'll give you 2 more things that Gary Halbert taught me. Number 1,
Okay.
no one has time to figure out your pathetic subtlety. This is what he said. And 2, what was number 2? Find a starving crowd. No one has time to understand your pathetic subtlety. And number 3, if you write a piece of copy and you hand it to someone and they say, this is great copy, you've got a loser on hand. If you hand it to someone and they say, where can I buy this? You've got a winner.
I agree with you completely. I say this for people, say, who want to create courses, and I go, you don't tell people what your course is about and say, would you buy this? You tell them what your course is about, and you wait for them to say, I need this, here's my credit card. So any last sales strategies, Paul, that my audience needs to hear before we wrap up?
This is going to be a controversial one. And I like being controversial.
Ready.
Sometimes you need to break rapport and shock your prospects. So, for example, if someone says, I need more time to think it over, I'm going to shock them. And I will use a tiny bit of pain, just a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit. I will say, I understand, may I ask a question? Have you ever taken a long time to think something over and it still turned out to be a horrible decision? And then I'll shut up because we've all experienced that. I'll say, maybe it's not about time, but about the clarity you need to recognize we can move forward today. So thinking about it like that, speak to me heart to heart, human to human. What is it that we really need to get clear on and put out on the table? Now that's an invitation. First I shock them so they can no longer even remember that objection. I give them amnesia for it in a sense. And then I invite them to have a heart-to-heart human conversation.
And does that usually close the deal?
Nothing always closes the deal. What that does, it doesn't close the deal. What it does is open up the permission for the prospect to share the real objection. Oftentimes, I need more time to think it over is a smokescreen. It means you haven't explained the value proposition, you haven't demonstrated the return on investment, or there's something else getting in the way. They just have a deep fear, they've been ripped off a lot, whatever it is. But you have to get their permission. You have to give them the space to make it not about me selling you, but about let's have a heart-to-heart human discussion. What's really on your mind? And shut up.
I like that.
I won't
I
use.
like the shut up, by the way. I love the shut up.
Well, there's an abbreviation I won't use because I don't want to offend your audience. But let's say, shut the heck up. How about that? Shut the
I
heck
get
up.
it. I get it. I get it. So, Paul, if people want to learn more about you, learn about your podcast, connect with you, where should they go?
Two things. I do have my own podcast called The Influencer's Edge. We are in the top 10%.
Which I will be on.
Yes.
Yes.
We interviewed you. You did a great job, by the way. I really loved that discussion. It was fun. It was fun.
Thank you.
I do have a podcast called The Influencer's Edge.
Absolutely.
And then I have a free book that also comes with a 10-minute video training on how to crush objections. It's got 2 of my 5 top ways to do it. I believe you can consume it in 10 minutes. If you want a downloadable instant access to my new book, The Subconscious Sales Advantage, and you want that training, go to paulrossbook.com. We'll give you instant access to it. There's no fee, no charge. It's my way of sharing and sharing some of my cuckoo ideas.
Well, I just have to say, I think that you've given new frameworks to selling in a whole different way. I haven't had somebody on my podcast talking about these different layers of our unconscious, how we make purchases, what's really going on. So I thought, I really appreciate all that you have shared. So I just want to say, Paul, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
I want to say thank you for letting me do one of my favorite things. I have 4 values: communication, connection, contribution, and creativity. And today you've let me live all 4 of those values. So I really appreciate it. Thank you. This is the start of my work day, and it's been a fantastic start.